There we go. Yes, I have a little bell, a tiny bell. We're getting a big bell in pretty soon, but not quite yet. This is, by the way, this is a bell from the Kiwanis Club, I'll let you know. It's not even a Rotary bell. So, good morning. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and for the republic.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the
And to
republic,
the republic for which it stands,
nation,
one nation,
under
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test. You know what we think, say, and do. 1, is it the truth? 2, is it fair to all concerned? 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned? All right, so our reflection this morning is Anna Persicari. Anna.
All right. Well, I'll try to be quick, but you can sit down. You don't have to stand from. Standing ovation is wonderful, but I have to earn it first. Since I was a little girl, I was watching every Olympic game, summer, winter, every 2 years, back in Moldova with my neighbors and family, with my host family when I was studying abroad in France. And this year I was watching with my family in Missouri. And I watch it to cheer for my favorite athletes, teams, and countries. But I also watch because I find so many wonderful moments for inspiration and motivation when I'm watching the games. And this year had lots of those moments. I just want to share one of those moments. Maybe you've seen it. Her name is Sifan Hassan. She's a 28-year-old runner that was born in Ethiopia but came to the Netherlands and was representing the Netherlands this Olympic game. In her qualifier runner, 1,500 meters, and fell down. So did she. So she was the last one, which means you don't qualify for Olympics. She got back up and started to run, and one by one, she caught up to all the Olympic athletes in front of her, and she actually ended up winning that race. From falling down, coming first was very, very impressive. In just under 12 hours, she ran again and she won her first out of 3 medals this year. So very, very inspirational. Why I find it inspirational? Because the moment I was witnessing and watching on TV kind of reminded me the situations that sometimes I fall down and it could not be my fault. It's just fate. Few hands up. But what do you do in those moments? You get back up and you just do your best, keep on running, and maybe you win, but it's okay because you know you put all your efforts out. And this is what she said to press right after the race. Believe me, it was horrible, but sometimes I think bad things happen for good. When I fell down, I said to myself, okay, life doesn't always go the way that you want. After that, I felt like somebody who drank 20 cups of coffee and I ran. So cheers to coffee and keep on running.
Thank you, Anna. All right, our song. We have Russ Micklitz leading our song today, and in honor of our guest.
Yes. So, as Anna said, get back up. And I'm going to have Ann come forward, and she's going to help me with the song. Of course, the topic today are the Vikings. So we're going to call an audible. And the audible is spread out, because we don't want you spreading your voice germs to your neighbor. So spread out, and we're going to sing Skol. I'll start it out, and Anna's going to help me. Okay.
Got it.
Skol Vikings, let's win this game. Skol Vikings, honor your name. Go get that first down, then get a touchdown. Rock 'em, sock 'em, fight, 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 fight. Go Vikings, run up the score. You'll hear us yell for more. V-I-K-I-N-G-S. Skol Vikings, let's go.
Skol.
Thanks, Ann.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. I think we're ready to get right into the stadium now. Now I've never known the words to that before. It's nice to actually see them. I want to welcome all our guests and visiting Rotarians. What guests do we have with us today? I'm seeing one. Steve, good to see you. You want to introduce yourself and say hello?
I'm the plus one. I'm Steve, actually the chauffeur this morning and helping the lovely Lisa come out and join her friends. It was a discussion. I said, Lisa, I'll take you if you want to go. And she said, already a month of four walls, so get her outside and give her a real life. And she's got a few months left of being, not invalided, but needing care. Well, I don't want to say she always needed extra care. But at this point, she seems to be getting extra care.
Steve, thank you. And Lisa, it's really good to see you out and about. Any other guests or visiting Rotarians today? Anyone online? Nobody online? All right. Well, thank you all and welcome. Welcome. Very good. Next, we have Happy Bucks. And I'm going to run the Happy Bucks this morning. So, Ross, what is the site, in case you didn't bring cash? If you brought cash, we're happy to take your cash. In case you didn't bring cash, you can go online to give butter. Ross, what's the site?
So if you go to our website, there's a link under the donate tab on the upper right where you pay your foundation dues and other dues. There's a Give Butter Happy Bucks location. So if you're online, you can do it via that route, or if you're in the room too. So.
All right, so who's happy today? Anyone have any happy bucks? We got Bill Jackson over here, Ross. Thank you for running around.
Yeah, it's been a great summer for me, especially the month of July. All 5 of my grandkids have been home for the first time in 3 years. So it's,
Nice.
I love to see them, and I love to see the interaction. They're ages 4 to 8. So it's here's my $5. So it's been great.
Good to hear, Bill. Anyone else happy at that table? All right, who else is happy here today? Yes, Gary.
Well, all of you probably know my brother Mark. He went under the knife yesterday for back surgery, and it's way down in the S area, but he had 2 vertebrae fused and had some other work done in the spinal column. And the doctor afterwards said that the vertebrae were really compressed, which is why he has been in pain for over a year. But apparently things went well. It's a little early to tell, but he's home recovering. And I just wanted to give a happy buck for successful surgery.
All right. Gail.
Good morning, everybody. In that same vein, some of you know this, but last spring, my husband, Steve, who a lot of you know, has Parkinson's, and he had what's called deep brain stimulation surgery. And it was extremely successful, and his right side now has no tremor.
Oh,
So
that's great.
it's awesome. Yeah. So he may be doing the other side shortly, so we'll see what happens, but it was great.
Wonderful. I forget I'm supposed to make you say your name so that people know who you are.
Joyce Agnew.
Good morning, Joyce.
Good morning, Scott. Just a couple of things. I really like being here, and thank you to all of you who worked so hard to find this new place. This is nice. And Lisa, I'm glad you're here. Take care of yourself. And Scott, welcome back. I'm glad you made it too.
Thank you.
You made it. It sounds funny.
I'm going to call on Carol. I'm not going to make you put money in, but Carol, tell us about this great award that you won.
I'm not ready for this, so I can't. It's a Women in Business Award from Twin Cities Business Journal,
yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Anyone else?
Ed Codet, sorry about the voice. I have a happy buck for surviving going out to western South Dakota and Sturgis. And I just want the Mosman brothers to know that I left a little bit of fence for them to help me with.
Oh, good. Anyone else? Back behind you there, Ross, too. Let's get Jonathan in here.
Hi, John Hobbs. I'm just happy to be here. Found the place. It's very, very nice club. And I'm also happy to hear that 15 people have signed up for Saturday's food packing. And if you're interested, just show up. So thank you.
Where do we show up?
It's at Every Meal. The address is on the website. It's in Roseville. Just Google Every Meal, Roseville. You'll get there.
And this is Saturday the 14th.
Saturday from 9 to 11. One time only. You're done by 11. You've done your good deed. You can check it off for the day.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, who else is happy? Anna.
All right, haven't done this in a long time, but not many things happened in my family in the last year, but something big happened a few weeks ago. So my family, which is my mom and my sister, we're a small family, we're planning a family vacation to go to Vegas for just a few days, for a few months ago, well, for the last few months. And we get to Vegas, and my sister brings her boyfriend. We love him, very, very wonderful gentleman. And as soon as they meet us in the lobby, they say, oh, by the way, his family's flying in. We're like, oh, well, cool. I mean, we wanted to meet them, but due to COVID, we canceled. They live in California. And we meet them. We have a wonderful dinner in the evening. And then they take us to a wonderful bar. It's a brand new Hilton hotel in Vegas on the Strip. And the top floor, 66, 69, beautiful look of the Strip. And the guy gives a very nice toast. And then he puts his hand in the pocket, gets on his knee, and proposes. Of course, we knew it would happen, and we were so happy. And, well, you know me, I like to joke. And I say, well, you're in Vegas. You probably could just get married and be done with everything. They look at each other, and they say, actually, we planned the wedding for tomorrow. So we did not want you to stress out, and my mom is very emotional. So they said, we took care of everything, so you just need to show up. So the next day, they got married. So there you go. My family just got bigger by one more.
All right, I think we have one online and we have Matthew as well.
Wonderful. Should we
go
do
online?
the online one quick first? Here?
Is that my cue to go?
Go ahead, Jean.
I'm happy because we spent the weekend in Cincinnati. We met up with my brother and his family for the first time in over 2 years, and we celebrated my daughter's 32nd birthday. It's just not possible that I've got a daughter that is 32, but the calendar would say otherwise. So we had a cake for her and sang, and it was really a great celebration for all of us to be together and get to celebrate her birthday. But she didn't get married, so.
That's great. Thank you, Jean. Matthew.
Good morning, everybody. I am incredibly happy to be here at the Women's Club. This is my first time here, and it's great to see Brock and Ross in action with all this gear. I am so impressed. Thank you guys for your hard work. And I am a huge football fan. And sorry, I don't, everybody is not a huge football fan, but I just live and breathe football. And so I am just incredibly happy that my friend Ann Doepner is here. I worked with her. I'm an event planner, and there was an event about 5 years ago where Ann was in a panel discussion with Mark Rosen was from WCCO, was the moderator, and we had all of these defensive players on the stage, like Carl Eller and Ben Lieber and Pete Bursich, and Ann was on the stage as well, and she did a phenomenal job. It was just amazing, so I'll never forget it. So here's to football. Football starts in about a month, right? Season officially starts. I can't wait.
And I like you have your purple shirt on today, too. Just perfect, perfect. All right, and seeing nobody else, all right, I will say I am happy. I got to go, and this was the highlight of my summer as a kid, to the Cokato Corn Carnival last night. And it was just fabulous. My sister is the is the president of the Cokato Dassel Rotary Club out there, and I got to buy a root beer float from that Cokato Dassel Rotary stand to support Rotary out in Cokato, and it was a ton of fun. So I have some money for you too, Ross. Back to announcements. Of course, you know, this is only my second time, so I skip around. Announcements, I think Bill Jackson has an announcement about the International Service Committee meeting coming up.
Yeah, we're having our monthly meeting. Monthly International Service Committee meeting tomorrow night, 6 o'clock at the Red Rabbit in the North Loop. You know, we got to get hip and go to those trendy places. So hope you can join us, one and all.
The Red Rabbit is run by the Red Cow people. If you haven't been there yet, it's fantastic. All right, Gail has an announcement. Tomorrow morning, right, is our peer group.
Yes, tomorrow morning, just a reminder, we have peer group, and our topic is around masterminds and mastermind groups, and Dean Sandberg is going to lead that conversation. So we start gathering at 6:45, and we meet from 7 to 8. And if you don't have the link, just send me an email, gail@gailnoakes.com. Thanks. What? It is online only.
Great, thank you, Gail. I have a couple announcements. First of all, book club. So we were going to meet yesterday, but we decided to push it off to September 14th. So now you have time to get the book, to read the book, to be ready to talk. And the book we're reading is Punching the Air. And by all accounts, it's just a fabulous book. So join us with book club September 14th. Right now we're on Zoom. We'll see, maybe we can have a live component. We'll see if we can add that in or not, but for sure it'll be on Zoom. The Rotary International and 5950 wants us to have a board position for a public information person. And we actually have a board position open for social media, so I'm going to combine those things. And if you're interested, please let me know, because we need to fill that spot. So public information, social media post is open. Come join our board. We'd love to have you. It's a really important position to get the word out there of all the good things our club is doing. Let's see what else. I think that's all I got. Anybody else have an announcement today? Very good. So let's move on to our day chair, who is Bill Jackson. And Bill luckily sent me his resume, or his bio, so I didn't have to make up things. Since retiring from Mortensen Construction after 30 years as a senior project manager, Bill has pursued various activities. Initially, he focused his time on trying to improve his golf game, but that failed. And so he formed an LLC, and he worked part-time as a construction consultant, having projects in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Japan. But getting tired of being back into the hectic life of working again, he started to focus his time on volunteer work first, with projects at his church, and then with the Engineers Without Borders, where he quickly got involved in designing and building a water infrastructure project in Mila Tres, Honduras. The initial phases of the project were financed by an EWB grant and donations from individuals, companies, and the City of Lakes Rotary Club. And Bill was so impressed with the commitment of the City of Lakes Rotary to international projects in developing countries, as well as local community projects, that he decided to join the City of Lakes Rotary Club, the best Rotary Club in the world. Since joining Rotary 3 years ago, Bill has been active in the International Service Committee, and he's our current chair. He has been successful in securing $155,000 in international Rotary grants, and for the final stage of the water distribution project in Mila Tres, Honduras. With the day-to-day activities of the project from 3,000 miles away in Spanish, which he doesn't speak, the project has been challenging even with his 44 years of construction experience, but boy, I bet they're glad to have you, Bill. Bill, thank you so much for being our day chair today, and I'll welcome you up to the podium.
Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Ann Doepner. She is the Director of Inclusion and Employment Investment for the Minnesota Vikings, where she works every day to create a culture where everyone feels a sense of belonging. She is the first full-time person dedicated to diversity and inclusion working for an NFL team. In her previous role as Director of Football Administration for Minnesota Vikings, Ann negotiated NFL player contracts and was responsible for matters of salary cap compliance. That's got to be a challenge. At the time of her transition into diversity and inclusion, she was one of only 2 women across the NFL working as a contract negotiator. She has received many honors for her work and has been featured on NBC Sports in On Her Turf segment, and founded the Minneapolis-St. Paul chapter of Women in Sports and Events in 2017 and continues to serve on the board of directors. Ann lives in St. Paul, Minnesota with her husband Aaron and her children Alice, 9, and James, 7. Let's welcome Ann.
Thank you so much. And I need to update my bio. My kids are 10 and 8. I'll do that when I get home. And as far as salary cap compliance, it's not that hard because it's not real money. So it's not this, I definitely don't see myself as an accountant or anything like that where you're dealing with real dollars. It's sort of monopoly money, as we like to say. So thank you so much for having me here today. It's really great to see people in person, to see people on the screen. This is my first, I was telling Matthew, my first hybrid presentation. So I just love that we're able to do things like this to bring more people together. And I need to say a special thank you to Matthew for inviting me. And I don't know if I've told Matthew this before, but the speaking gig he referenced at the Historical Society in 2016 was my first actual public speaking experience. And I was terrified because he wanted me to be up on a stage with 3 former players, So I had like this, and he wants me too? Like, this is wild. Why on earth would he want me to round out this panel? But I had such an amazing time, and I just thank you for that opportunity. And it was a wonderful event. And I found that through that, I actually found that I like speaking. So thank you for that gift. So the title of my talk is, as you can see, Authentic Leadership, Speak Up and Stand Out. My journey is one that's been a little bit unconventional, I guess you could say, for a number of reasons. I attended College of St. Benedict here in Minnesota, if anyone is familiar. I don't know if anybody's Bennies or Johnnies in the crowd, but a small liberal arts school, definitely no way to pursue a degree in sports of any kind. There was no sports management, anything like that, very broad education. And I chose French as a major, mainly because, and what I've really loved to see this morning is you all are about inspiring, right? And so I chose French because I had a professor that deeply inspired me as a freshman in college. She was a woman who was born in Italy, grew up in France, raised by her grandmother, met her husband in Germany. She spoke many, many languages completely fluently, well-traveled, and here she was in like tiny small town Minnesota, teaching French at a small women's college. And I was just blown away by everything she could bring to me as a person and not just as a French teacher. And so I decided to major in French because I wanted to hang out with Vera. And somehow I've gotten to where I am today. So I'll kind of walk you through that quickly so we can get to the meat of the presentation. But I did use my French degree in my first job. I worked for a small French travel company in Minneapolis with an office in Paris. From that, I went to work for a contractor for the PGA Tour. And that's where I discovered my love of really being around the sports industry. Like Matthew, I've always been a huge sports fan. It was the fabric of our family's culture, right? Who are the Gophers playing this weekend? Are we going? What are we eating for the game? I was keeping score at Twins games as like an 8-year-old kid. So I loved the energy and the excitement that sports can bring, and really the inspiration. I can't play any sports to save my life, but I can watch them and follow them. And so that's when the bug kind of bit me, and I said, I want to work in this industry. And of course, I had no idea when I was in college and declaring a French major. So I just found myself in a world where I said, I want to keep doing this. And so I applied for a job at the Vikings, and my bio referenced my title of Director of Football Administration that I held for a while, but I actually started as an executive assistant. So I came in a very administrative role, secretarial basically, in our football operations space. So I had no what you might call credentials, so to speak, to eventually become a director of football administration when I came in. But I learned it all on the job. And what I had was the desire to learn, the desire to grow, and the desire to contribute. In a way, like I mentioned, the fake money, it's actually a very creative business. When you're trying to structure contracts and be competitive about how you can do that to kind of manipulate the salary cap a little bit, right? And field the most competitive roster. So over time, I grew in my role, started to get promoted a little bit. Timing is always everything, and the person between me and my boss retired at an earlier age than we thought he might, and so then there was an opportunity for me to jump up. And then I finally was promoted to Director of Football Administration in 2016, and that's when I became the person at the table for some contract negotiations. And that's where things kind of, changed a little bit, I guess I would say, and where I understood that me being in that role was maybe, it was new, not only for me, but I think for the industry as well. And there were just some lessons that came along with that. So if we could switch to the next slide. Brene Brown is one of my favorite, guessing we have some Brene Brown fans also in the room. She speaks so much truth all the time. And this quote really sticks with me because I think for a long time in my career, being a woman in a male-dominated industry, and not only a male-dominated industry as a whole, but the corner I was in being almost exclusively male, I for a long time was afraid to kind of be who I really was because I knew that I was different. It was very visible, right, that I was different. And I felt like I sometimes had to prove myself that I belonged. I wasn't a former player or coach. I didn't have a law degree like a lot of people do who end up in that contract negotiator, salary cap manager seat. I don't even have any kind of advanced degree, an MBA or anything like that. So there were all these reasons that I knew that I was different, and I felt like it was my job to sort of hide those or conceal them so that I could continue to fit in with the norm that was around me, which was mainly men that I worked with. And that's just what I did. I was sort of on autopilot for a number of years, just operating in that mode of how can I fit in? How can I, let them know that, yes, I understand football, and yes, I have good ideas and all of these things. And what I didn't do was walk inside my story and own it for a very, very long time. And when you don't do that, when you're standing outside and kind of trying to sort of put it together, like you're watching your own self kind of go through life and saying, no, do this, don't do that, it's exhausting. It's completely exhausting, and it limits your potential, honestly. So I did that to myself for a very, very long time, looking back. And if you want to flip to the next one, this is that was me. I was sort of that cat, hanging out amongst all the penguins, kind of looking like them a little bit, but really not. And like that paralyzed look of fear in my eyes, right? Like, I don't want them to know. I don't want them to, figure me out, or so to speak. I think a lot of us have probably heard of imposter syndrome, where you feel like you don't belong. And I definitely had that on the panel at the History Center for sure, but I worked through that. And that's something you do to yourself, right? Like I did that to myself. I limited myself by my own belief that because I am different and I present differently, I must somehow not belong here, or I'm not worthy enough to be here. And so I walked around like this cat for a long time with my little pinned on nose, pretending that everything was fine and that, that I'm just like everyone else. But then what I did was I blended in, and I didn't lean into any of the different ideas that I had and different contributions I could make by virtue of maybe having a sort of a different background coming into the space. So a lot of it, like I said, very, very self-inflicted. But certainly, as you can imagine, some things were not self-inflicted and were actually sort of presented to me by the the circumstances I found myself in, and sometimes things were said to me. So if you flip to the next one, I heard a lot of things along the way. I would say, I think for a long time, I didn't think that it would be an issue. It's not an issue that I was a woman working in a kind of a male-dominated space, but I did get asked things that I definitely noticed my male colleagues weren't asked about, or my husband, who actually for a long time worked at the Minnesota Twins, so we were in a very similar kind of situation with our employers for a number of years. When I technically became pregnant with our first child in 2010, I started to, I was very excited about this. Obviously, we were going to start our family, and I started to hear that people were asking about my job. Someone who had been an intern a couple of years back at the Vikings he reached out to someone on staff and said, "I heard Anne's going to have a baby. What are they going to do about her job?" And it's sort of like startling to hear that when it's 2010 and you think you're kind of past those sort of assumptions that I may not want to come back. And I don't think he had any poor intent there. I think he just really wanted a job, and he thought this might be a way to, there might be an opening, and he was just advocating for himself. So no negative intentions there. But when I heard that, it felt a little bit like it just felt a little painful, because I thought, oh, why would he assume I'm not coming back? I'm gonna have a baby and then I'm gonna come back. And so that was, just a little difficult to hear. And meanwhile, nobody ever asked, my husband Aaron, whether he was going to come back after the birth of our daughter. And it just was assumed that he would. And then I remember being back after maternity leave, and I had a couple of people kind of look at me like, "Well, where's your baby?" Like, "Well, she's at daycare. There's a thing called daycare. You pay them a lot of money, and then they take care of your child and keep it alive until you get home." But I was realizing that the football operation I was working in truly had never seen a working mother in 2011 when she was born. And so again, no poor intention on anyone's part. It's just, this was new. They had never seen this happen, which is, again, very remarkable, but also not, sort of. And so those things, they just kind of, I would hear them and it would be a little bit odd, but I kind of brushed it off, didn't internalize it or anything. But fast forward now to 2016, after I was promoted and in a more significant role. And that following spring in 2017, I was down at the NFL league meetings. And these are traditionally pre-COVID, pretty fancy affairs. They're at a pretty nice resort in a beautiful location somewhere. This one happened to be at the Biltmore in Arizona. And I had a series of meetings during the day pertaining to my field, and then some of my colleagues were there in different sorts of meetings. And it was March, and at the end of the day, our general manager and our assistant GM at the time, he's no longer with our club, but they reached out to a group of us and were like, "We're going to watch the March Madness tournament. Swing by if you want to just kind of download from the day, and we'll have a nightcap." And so a couple of my colleagues and I met up with our GM and our assistant GM at the hotel kind of patio, and we were just hanging out. And then I see another NFL general manager walk in the room, and he's a really well-known name in the industry because he's been around a very, very long time. And so I, of course, knew who he was and knew there was no way he would know who I was. But I was like, oh. And so he approached our table, said hello to my GM, or the rest of our group, and then I was introduced. And he paused and looked at me, kind of like he was pondering. And then he said, "Oh, you're Anne." And I was like, "Yeah, oh my gosh, I'm so pleased to meet you. I've been watching your career. I'm really impressed. Congratulations on your success." And I was really flattered that he somehow knew who I was, and I felt like, okay, I'm making it. I'm fitting in with the Penguins. Like, I'm one of them now because he knows who I am. And then without missing a beat, he said, "So then you're my problem." And I was so confused naturally because it made no sense. And so I figured that it was like a joke that I wasn't getting. So I kind of laughed and I said, "Well, how could I be your problem? I just met you 10 seconds ago, And he's like, "Well, are you trying to negotiate contracts?" And so then my stomach kind of sunk a little bit because I thought, oh, okay, it's not really a funny joke. Like, and I said, well, I'm not trying to, I am. And he said, well, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to start doing that? And I said, because it's my job and it's the next step in my career. And he said, well, the reason you're my problem is because I have a woman on my staff who found out you've been given this opportunity and now she wants the same one. And what he didn't say after that was, and I don't want to give it to her, but it was implied. And I just was stunned. I didn't know what to say. And this moment is something I'm forever grateful for what happened next. My GM stepped in, again, without missing a beat. And he said, hey, listen, she's not part of the problem. She's our solution. You know, Anne is a huge critical part of our team, and we're really excited about her development and her potential. And he just completely shut it down and stood up for me. And that moment was so powerful because I felt like completely alone. You know, I felt like the cat without even my nose on, like all of a sudden, you know, I was clearly an outsider and nobody around me to support me until he said that. And because of that, and we've always had a good relationship, but especially because of that moment, it was so deeply critical to me continuing to push and keep going because I felt like, okay, he sees, even if someone else maybe is having growing pains, so to speak, about the industry kind of becoming more diverse and things like that, he's in my corner. You know, he's got my back and I'm going to be okay because of that. And he didn't think anything of it. And a week or so later, we were back in the office and I just went in there and I was like, you know, I just needed you to know that when you said that in Arizona last week, it was so critical to me. And he didn't even know what I was talking about, and I kind of had to remind him. And he was like, "Oh yeah, well, where does that guy get off saying that?" You know, and I was like, "No, but I need you to actually know that you really helped me. Like you really made an impact on me in that moment." And what's so beautiful about that is that even though he hasn't walked in my shoes and wasn't trying to sort of fit in and never, you know, in that same way in his career, he helped someone who maybe didn't fit in by just a simple one sentence, right? He had like a lasting impact by speaking up in that moment and not okaying it and not condoning it. So I'm forever grateful for that. But again, you know, those comments, even though I was supported in the moment, it still kind of hurt. It still is some emotional labor and it's exhausting to sort of have to prove yourself that you belong. Another thing that I like to talk about that I've heard is the quiz. So, and I call it the quiz in quotes. But when I talk to my fellow women who work in the sports industry, we all often bond over this same concept. And when I refer to the quiz, it's when I meet someone for the first time and tell them where I work, and particularly when I was working in football ops and would tell them the nature of my role. And often I'd get met with, "Oh, really? So how much is Patrick Mahomes' contract?" Or name all the teams in the NFC West. You know, like they immediately needed to like reconcile, I think, their expectation of like what I looked like versus what I do and the knowledge and the expertise that I have. And I laugh about it a lot because I think, you know, if you met a CPA, you would not immediately drill them about tax laws, right? You would just assume they're qualified to do their job and they have the expertise they need, and you don't need them to sit there and prove it to you when you've just met them casually in a social setting. And it's no different than that, really. And so anyway, after all of these, and we can flip to the next one, you know, I started to, like I said, hide things because I thought, okay, so I have all of these visible things that are different about me. Everyone can clearly tell, you know, I'm female and, you know, there's other things that I don't want them to know that may be not as visible. And a lot of that is, like I said, my roots of having a bachelor's degree from College of St. Benedict and not having gone to law school. I remember for so long in my career, I would gloss through those conversations because most of my counterparts around the league, including my boss at the time, had a law degree, had some sort of, I guess what you could say, you know, learned credentials to do the work, even though, like I was telling Matthew earlier, to learn how to manage the salary cap is not something you even learn in law school. You have to learn it on the job. But I would gloss over that in conversations, and I would not tell anyone. I also never wanted anyone to know, like I mentioned earlier today, that I started as an administrative assistant. I never wanted anyone to know that. And it was a really hard thing for me to grow out of. But I thought if they found those things out, they would say, oh, they would think, kind of go to that, like, oh, she got lucky. You know, she just happened to be right place, right time. She's not actually the best person for this job. And what I've learned actually is the more that I do tell people those things, the more inspiring it actually is for more different types of people to think, oh, okay, I don't need to define myself by where I went to school, what degree I have or don't have, what my first job was, how my career progressed. I started to find when I started to open up about those things that people started to kind of perk up, because I think they started to say, oh, I can see myself then sort of reinventing or growing in a space that maybe I didn't feel like I learned enough about by a certain age, right? I mean, in the role I'm in now, which is focused on diversity and inclusion, I moved into that role 2 years ago, knowing, I mean, essentially nothing. Don't tell my employer. No, but at the age of 40, I totally pivoted my career, and there's no reason everyone can't do that, right? At some point. So I've really learned to not hide and to actually lean into those differences, and then what that caused me to do, and we can go to the next one here, is to finally emerge, because I spent probably a good first 10, 11, 12 years of my career with the Vikings hiding, concealing, having ideas in meetings that nobody else was saying, but not wanting to say them because I assumed that if I was the only one thinking that it was wrong, because I assumed that the majority would have thought of it, right? Things like, I remember a year-end roster evaluation meeting we were holding. So this is where after the season, you sit down, you go through literally every player on the roster and analyze their performance, their potential, what is their contract situation, because that can play into whether you want to bring them back or extend them or release them in the offseason, those kind of things. You just really go through detail by detail to get your offseason plan in focus. And I remember we had a player who wasn't reaching his potential. And we had a coach who said, you know, I just can't get through to him. He doesn't respond to my coaching, and I don't know why. I've never dealt with this in my coaching career. It's always worked. And then he kind of made like an offhand comment, like, well, he was, I don't know if it's just he was raised by his mother and his grandmother, and I think he maybe doesn't necessarily have the same trusting relationship with men in an authority figure role as maybe he does with women. And it was kind of like a shoulder shrug and then move on to the next guy. And I'm sitting there like, could we add a woman to the coaching staff? Like, that maybe if there's a woman on the coaching staff or the player development staff or in a authority role where someone would feel safe working with them, and I never said it, and I wish I had, I wish I had offered, and that was one of countless moments like that where I thought, well, I'm not going to say anything because nobody else is saying this, and a lot of it had to do with, me, that urge I had to suppress and to not be different and to just kind of go along. And so finally how I emerged, and it was actually, 2016 was a big year for me, Matthew. So not only the first speaking gig, but my promotion, but also the NFL in 2016 hired a woman by the name of Sam Rappaport, and she is their director of football development. And she was hired specifically to help create a pipeline and pathway for more women into football operations roles, because the league understood, that they needed to do some work to try and create more opportunities for women in that space. And when I found out she was hired, I called her right away that day. And I just said, hey, listen, I'm Ann Doepner. We don't know each other, but I'm at the Vikings. I'm here for whatever you need. I'm so thrilled to have you in this space. Let's work together. How can I help you from a club perspective so you can understand what the needs are? And then how can I help, how can you help me from a league perspective to get the support? And so I started working with her on a lot of projects and initiatives, started speaking at a lot of the career forums that she held, which were geared towards college women working in college athletic programs who had clear potential. They had the credentials that I didn't have to come into a football career in the NFL. And I started to speak to these groups, and I realized, I need to actually be real with this group of people, because I can't pretend like, well, you just need to fit in. I can't give them that advice and feel good about it. It's not doing a good, that's a disservice, I think, to the whole industry. And everyone who's going to come after us. And so I started to be real about what I thought were my faults or my shortcomings, which was all things that happened in my past that were not negative in any way, but I viewed them as negative. How I came into the industry, where I went to school, what I studied, what I didn't study, all of those things. I felt like I'm just going to be real with this group. And so again, in similar fashion to that History Center panel, Sam had me speak at the inaugural Women's Careers Forum on a panel with David Shaw, who's the head coach at Stanford football, Ron Rivera, who is the head coach of the Washington football team. He was with the Carolina Panthers at the time. And Jerry Reese, who was the New York Giants general manager for years and led them to 2 Super Bowls. So it was very similar because it was those 3 guys and me. And I remember sitting up there and I'm looking at this crowd. It was 40 women who had been carefully selected to attend this program, high potential, amazing women. And again, I kind of had that choice of like, I can sort of toe the line and, say all the things that sound nice, or I can be really open and real. And I chose that opportunity to be very open and real. And I just addressed that group and I said, listen, I came in with a different set of credentials. I learned on my way. And I feel like now my role is to send that elevator back down to all of you, because I have somehow reached this level and I view my role now as helping shape all of you, and it's no longer about me. And that's where I transitioned my career as well into the work that I'm doing now, which is helping to create a more welcoming, inclusive environment of belonging, not only at the Vikings, but across the league. And I have many co-conspirators in that work at other clubs that I'm really happy to. And if we can flip to I think this is my final slide. So again, this just kind of sums up, I think, who I am and what I do now. So I learned a lot, obviously, working in football ops, and love the business. Matthew was asking me this morning if I still do any of that work at all, and I really don't directly, but what I do is I kind of help some of my proteges. So when they need me, they know I'm there, and I'm just want to make it easier for them. And what I always tell kind of my number one protege, who I hired her out of college a few years ago to support me in football ops. She transitioned into my role when I moved into the inclusion space. And then just this summer, she got a huge promotion to go to the Cleveland Browns as their director of football administration at the age of 24, which was a title I got at the age of 37, and nothing could make me happier. And I tell her all the time that I want you to grow faster than I did. And so my job is, how can I help you grow faster than I did? Because there's no reason it needed to take that long for me. And so I view it as my job to help others get there faster than I did. So I'm really grateful to be in my current role, because this is what I get to do every day, is to somehow make the experience better, more welcoming, helping people feel like they do belong and their ideas and their voice matter. So with that, I know I'm watching the clock, don't worry. Would love if there are any questions that I can answer from anyone online or here.
Are those people with the Vikings that are with you?
Oh yeah, thank you. I'd love to tell the story of that photo. No, this is a group of young women from Capitol Hill Junior High here in St. Paul, which is actually the school I attended for middle school. And this photo was taken at the 2018 NFL Women's Summit that was held here in conjunction with the Super Bowl when we hosted that in 2018. So it was one of the events leading up to the big game that week. And I was a part of a panel for that event, speaking about my experience. And I got off stage and was about ready to head back to the office, and I got a request from PR for an interview. And they said, "There's some media here who wants to meet with you." And I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." I was like, "Are you okay with me meeting with them?" Because you always have to go through PR. And he's like, "I'm totally okay." He's like, "It's Capitol Hill Middle School." And I said, "No way, that is where I went to middle school." And so it turns out that these young women's social studies teacher knew that I was going to be speaking, knew that I was a Capitol Hill alum. So he had them credentialed as legitimate press. You can see their credentials around their neck. So they were covering the event like any other, ESPN, Sports Illustrated, they had the same credentials as these young women. And he got them out of school and brought them to the event so they could watch, and then he hooked them up with an interview with me. And it was so amazing, and I have this photo framed at my desk. Because I just was blown away by the professionalism of these young women. They were coordinated in their interviews. They knew who was going to ask which question when. They had done their research. They asked amazing questions. And, they felt like it was a great opportunity for them, but actually it was the best opportunity for me, just because I felt so, I think, just honored to give them, I think, that experience. So, and to represent, right, for them, a potential opportunity for them. So that was a really fun day.
Thank you so much for speaking today. I love meeting women and hearing from them about their journey, how they grew professionally. But I also heard you saying there's lots of work to be done. There's still lots of things that need to change and happen. So I have a very hypothetical question. If you had all the superpower, magic wand, anything you could do, unlimited resources, what would you do to make that one next big change?
Wow. Oh, that's such a good question, because my to-do list is never ending. It's relentless. Ideally, I wouldn't even be in this role and there'd be nobody focused on this, because we wouldn't need it, right? That's the nirvana. But I think, honestly, what I would love to see is a female GM, a female head coach. And I'm just dying to see how an NFL football operation would go under female leadership. I'm really fascinated and curious about that, and I hope I get to see it, because it's just such a different way of thinking, I think. And so we've started to see a lot of women in coaching roles, right? If anyone that watched the Super Bowl, we saw there were 2 women on the Bucs sideline who now can say they've won a Super Bowl. Sarah Thomas refereed the game. We're adding another female referee, actually our first female referee of color this year to the NFL. So she'll be working games, which is very cool. So I love seeing all of those, but I want to see a woman at the top, and see what that actually, how that might change in operation. Not necessarily for the better, but just differently. I'm just very curious to see what a philosophy like that would look like. So not sure when we will see that. At this point, we have some female coaches, but they're still in pretty low ranking roles. We don't even have a coordinator yet or anything. But it's coming. We have Kim Eng, who became the GM of the Marlins in baseball this past year, which was very cool to see. So I want to see that, because it also just represents possibilities for other people to think, oh, I can do the same thing. Because often what I would hear when I was in my football ops role from people, men and women alike, was they didn't know that was a job. So if you don't know it's a possibility, you're not going to try to get there. So that clear, visible representation can indicate to someone that, oh, that is something I could do.
Great. I think we have one question online. Adekunle, is that right? That's right. Adekunle, can you ask your question? I can't read it from here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I could. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I'll even read what I just typed. You've done such an amazing job continuing to push forward through challenges you've faced within your career. I'm just curious, what motivational things have you done to push through? Whether it's taking on a mentor, reading a book, anything like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely an advocate of therapy. So for anyone, that's a staple for me. Also, my network of women. I honestly, when I started the Women in Sports and Events chapter here in the Twin Cities, it was pretty selfishly motivated, because I wanted to create ways to find those other women out there and spend time with them and support each other and get the support back from them. So it takes a lot of time to keep that chapter going and all of our programming and all of that. But every time we have an event, I walk away feeling uplifted and energized because we have that support network for each other. So I think there's a lot of power in finding your community and finding those like-minded individuals, kind of that concept of your personal board of directors to help guide you when you maybe need it or it's hard to see when you're in it and you need that outside perspective. So those women are that for me. I mentioned Brene Brown. Everything she writes, I read. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else, any other, but really it's finding those people that when we talk, we make sense to each other. I had that feeling when I went to the ESPNW conference in LA a number of years ago, and I remember texting my husband and saying, I'm with my people. Like during the main keynote speech, they interrupted it to give us an update on the WNBA championship score. And like, that's my language. I love that. I'm always tracking scores and often I don't find that with my female friendships, just because I don't have a lot of female friends who are really into sports to quite the level I am. So all of that makes me feel kind of just that sense of belonging and community and like there are people like me out there, which helps.
Absolutely love your story. It's very inspiring. We have seen so many strong women come out of St. Kate's and St. Ben's and things like that. My question is, a bunch of us in this room are in kind of the people space, and DEI has a lot more to it. So I'm thinking in terms of race, ethnicity, sexual orientation. Can you speak a little bit more about some other aspects of DEI and what are you passionate about right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
On those topics?
That is a great question. So you're absolutely right. There's so many layers of diversity. There's the visible ones, there's the invisible ones, and there's something about all of us that makes each of us diverse, right? And so I think, and you're right, it's also even just about more than people or an HR function at an organization. I mean, especially working for an organization like the Vikings, we have a huge platform and are very visible in the community. So we take that very, very seriously and want to make a good positive impact wherever we go, because we know we're inspiring people and we want to inspire everyone. We want everyone to know that they are welcome at our games and that they belong in the NFL fandom community. So just a couple of things more recently, we've been involved with the Twin Cities Pride Festival for a few years. This year we rebranded new Skull Pride t-shirts. You can find them on our website. They're very cool and it's a beautiful design, but more importantly, proceeds are going back to Twin Cities Pride from our sales. But one example I have of how you can, this is another good allyship, I think, example for how you can be an ally, even if you don't identify with that group. We have one staff member who is an out member of the LGBTQ community. Surely we have others, but we only have one who's out. And she kind of carries that on her shoulders and tries to help make sure that we're driving things forward. And I work alongside her in that effort. And when we went to sell the shirts this year, she sent an email to staff saying, we have these shirts for sale. If you want one, please email me. I'll leave it on your desk or I'll send it to your home since a lot of us are remote. And that was not just her selling shirts, right? That was her being vulnerable. And this is something she cares deeply about. And she wanted people to buy the shirts, not just to buy the shirts, but so that she also could feel supported. And one of our executive vice presidents was the first person to email her back with it, like less than a minute. He wrote her back and said, hey, I'll take two size large and then just throw in an extra $100 for me, please. Thanks for doing this. And she called me crying because she was so touched and moved that someone of that stature, him being an EVP, would come in with such strong support so quickly. And so then again, I went, because I like to reinforce the positive. I'm also a parent, so I've learned that usually works pretty good. So I called him up and I said, she was so touched by your response. And he said, well, I just bought some shirts. I think it's a cool design, And I was like, no, but it was the swiftness with which you replied and the generosity of your of your order that went to make her feel like she belongs here and she is safe and supported in her workplace. And that's essentially what I want everyone to feel at the end of the day. And that's just such, again, a small action on his part that went so far for someone. So we have, and I don't know if that answered your question, if you wanted me to talk more about the scope of DEI in general or how we work on it too. But we have an internal DEI council made up of 10 different employees, and we meet every week, which is kind of a heavy lift, but it's really that important and that critical. So we meet every Thursday, and we discuss pertinent issues. We ideate on things. We held our first Pride Day at training camp this year, just last week. We've started sponsoring the Minnesota Gay Flag Football League. They have our logo on their sleeves. So we want to represent in a lot of different spaces, and like I said, the to-do list is completely ongoing because there's so much to be done. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Very inspiring.
Thank you.
Don't walk away.
Oh.
We have a book that we'd like to donate in your honor to Way to Grow. It's a book that's given to a third grader.
Cool.
So you can sign that for
Oh, that's
us.
awesome. Thank you.
And then something for you to take with you. This is a bookmark that's made in Haiti, a school we support down there.
Oh, beautiful. Thanks for your good work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For that great message.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ann. That was just great. The great programs continue next week. We have Betsy McCann, who's the University of Minnesota Director of Athletic Bands. And I hope Doug Schmidt is back to hear that one. I want to thank everybody who participated today. Our greeter, Claire Burkett, Anna Persicari for the reflection, Bill Jackson for being our day chair, Russ Mickelitz for that great song, our Zoom master, Brock Ray and Ross Naylor, and our club administrator, Mary Pat Cumming. Thank you all for making this a great meeting. You all have a great Rotary week.